Hello and welcome everyone to the latest City St George's European Social Survey and NatSen Survey Methods webinar. I'm Tim Hanson, a Senior Research Fellow at the European Social Survey headquarters, and I'll be chairing today's session. We're very pleased to welcome Diana Zavala-Rojas and Agustin Blanco Bosco from Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona. Diana is a social statistician specialising in multinational, multi-regional, multilingual comparative social research. And is the External Deputy Director for the European Social Survey. Agustin is a PhD student and researcher at UPF and also works on the European Social Survey. So Diana will deliver a presentation with insights from the European Social Survey ICOS Cities Panel, which was a three-wave longitudinal study fielded in Munich and Paris to explore residents' views on climate change and policies in their cities to mitigate it. And Diana will talk for the first part of the hour, and there will then be time for questions, which Agustin will also join to answer. If you do have any questions, please type these into the Q&A area, and we'll go through as many as we can. So now over to Diana.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today walking you through the ESS ICOS City Panel together with Agustin. This panel is a collaboration between ICOS ERIC and ESS ERIC. ICOS stands for Integrated Carbon Observation System, and it is a research infrastructure to quantify the greenhouse gas balance of Europe and adjacent regions. Before starting, I want to name the researchers in this project, as I'm presenting today on behalf of a team that made possible this study. First, my colleague Agustin Blanco Bosco from UPF. He is the survey project manager and will be taking your questions, as Tim already introduced us. Then in alphabetical order, Benjamin Boster from SICT, the ESS Data Archive, Gry Karslen from SICT as well, Peter Lin from Essex University, Osrat Hochmann, ESS National Coordinator for Germany from GESIS, Lisa Jackel from GESIS as well, Nicolas Sauger from Sciences Po, the PI for the panel in Paris. And our two experts in questionnaire design, who were Malcolm Fairbrother from Uppsala University and Rory Fitzgerald, the ESS director. So now let's move on to a brief summary, an overview of the project. Our main objective of this project was to develop and test comprehensive greenhouse gas measurement observatories and technologies in urban environments. This was a Horizon 2020 project with a total funding of 13 million, including 30 scientific partners. And it runs from 2021 to 2025. So we're finishing this year. This is the first event in which we launch the preliminary results, and the data will be available for all of you, but before the end of the year. More information about the project can be found at its website, here linked. And all formal information about the project is noted here below on the slide. As these slides will be publicly available for you, you can access that easily. Okay, let's move on. So it is known that urban areas account for a significant share of global and European greenhouse gas emissions. So they become central to efforts aimed at reducing such emissions. This project brought together citizens, policymakers, and scientists to co-design greenhouse gas measurement methods and services for these cities to support effective climate action. So in summary, this is a project for policymaking using data from different sources. And one of these sources, as you will see, is survey data. I will explain you why. So Munich, Paris, and Zurich were selected as pilot cities due to their climate action plans, which are quite advanced, existing policies, climate ambition, and potential to enhance current greenhouse gas inventories. And then the ESS ICOS City Panel has so far taken place in Paris and Munich. The scientific rationale is that climate change cannot be fully understood without human data. Attitudes toward climate change and climate policies can provide fundamental information to interpret greenhouse gas and environmental data. Human data, specifically survey data, when used in combination with this environmental data, can enhance this understanding. So this data collected in the project is addressed to policymakers and scientists, but it is also prepared in a way that it is accessible for citizens and educators. I will introduce the role of the ESS in this ICOS City project. As my colleagues from headquarters said, this is the first time we collaborated in a project led by other clusters of science. So ESS adds the human dimension to greenhouse gas measurements by providing attitudinal and behavioral data. The primary aim is to produce high-quality survey data to support policymakers in implementing these environmental policies and to enhance and enrich these greenhouse gas measurements. The data should be combined with other forms of environmental information. Therefore, another key objective of this project is to develop a methodology for data linkage using surveys and environmental data. Producing high-quality survey data is a complex endeavor, as you may imagine. I already introduced the researchers in this project. 6 teams collaborated to design, collect, and make the data publicly available. From the core scientific team of the ESS, we had HQ at City St. George University of London. They contributed to questionnaire design and best practices for online panel implementation. Then with Essex University, we work with the sampling and the weighting strategies and methods. The ESS archive at SICT contributed to data processing curation, and they will be publishing the data on our website. At UPF, we took care of the coordination of all the ESS teams, the specifications and questionnaire design, and the national team in Germany implemented the panel in Munich. The national team in France implemented at Sciences Po implemented the panel in Paris. All 6 teams together contributed to establishing the methodology, as this is the first time that ESS conducted surveys at the city level. Now let's move on to the methodology of the study. So this was a 3-wave online survey panel on attitudes toward climate change and climate policies. The fieldwork took place in 2023 and 2024. The gross sample was 2,500 residents in each city, Munich and Paris, and participants received letter invitations to join the first wave, and with their explicit agreement, they were recontacted for subsequent waves. Some questions were adapted from the ESS Round 8 module on attitudes toward climate change and energy preferences. Other questions were developed by mapping environmental policies from the Climate City action plans and transforming them into survey items. This was a very interesting exercise for us questionnaire designers because we took the Climate City action plans, which are very different documents. For instance, in Munich, it was very technical oriented. And in Paris, it was there was an equivalent document for citizens. So we took these documents, selected the policies that were the same at the global level, but sometimes they were implemented differently, and we transformed them into survey items. So as I already mentioned, before the end of the year, not only the data, but also the questionnaires will be made available on the ESS data portal. So more specifically, I present here fieldwork dates by wave. We ran 2 waves in 2023 and 1 in 2024. Final achieved sample was a bit higher in Munich than in Paris. Here you can see the final numbers in each wave. Okay, I move on. So I will talk a bit about the data linkage strategy and the challenges. I won't present results of this now, because this is actually what we're working on as I speak today, in order to finish the project and publish as well this methodology. So the objective is that we compare human and environmental data using a common unit of analysis. These will be city districts. In Munich, they are called Stadtbezirke, if I don't pronounce it wrongly, and in Paris, these are arrondissements. The ESS national teams in Germany and France recorded respondents' addresses. Oh, sorry, I will close my window because something is going on outside. Yeah, this is a live webinar, so and I'm working from home. Okay, let's go back. So I was explaining that the ESS national teams in Germany and France recorded respondents' addresses were constructing the gross sample. The poll project partners provide environmental inventories in gridded form for both Munich and Paris. And respondents' addresses and these environmental grids are brought together at the level of the city districts. The focus of the linkage is on areas where we can combine both types of data. For instance, with greenhouse gas emissions, we have questions about this topic. Also, transportation in general, waste, green spaces, among other indicators. Okay. However, data linkage presents some challenges, and specifically in this project, they are related to data privacy. So human data needs to be processed following the GDPR, and only the national teams have access to these addresses. So the data needs to be analyzed at a higher level, at an upper level. In this case, we selected the district level to prevent the identification of respondents. This data privacy challenge means also that only 2 teams, the national teams in Germany and in France, have access to these addresses. They have to pre-process the data, and then we can analyze and combine it and make it available for you. So the second challenge is limited statistical power. Some geographical units will include only few responses, limiting the scope of analysis. Then another challenge is data harmonization. Human data and environmental data are recorded through substantially different methods, increasing the complexity of the linkage. In the end, what we want to do here is to establish methodology. So although this is a pilot study in this sense, we hope that by the end of the study, you will have a solid methodology for combining these 2 sources of data. Okay, so now that I have introduced the project, the researchers, institutions, the challenges, I would like to walk you through some of the preliminary findings from the 3 survey waves. I call them preliminary because for now, we're only looking at frequencies, and I will not present all the variables available in the data. The data is much more richer than I present here today. As the data will be publicly available before the end of the year, I'd like to invite you to explore it, analyze it, and publish with it, as it provides some very interesting insights into urban areas and climate-related issues. The questionnaire varied approximately 15% from wave to wave. So through my slides, I will vary the wave that I present. Sometimes I just wanted to bring you here some insights today. In general, for the same questions, we don't observe large changes from wave to wave, as they were implemented with very short times in between. All the slides you will see here show weighted results. Each one also includes the fieldwork dates and the sample size. I won't go into those details here, but since the slide will be shared afterwards, so that information will be available to you. Okay, so we were to the first slide of results. First, on climate change, we ask, do you think it is caused by natural processes, human activity, or both? As you can see, a clear majority of respondents in both Paris and Munich, around 76%, believe it is entirely or mainly caused by human activity. When we compare this with the ESS round 11 data at the national level, the difference is striking. Only 56% in France and 49% in Germany gave the same answer. Then we look at this same question by age group. In Munich, we observe little variation across all groups. Between 74 and 78 say climate change is entirely or mainly caused by human activity, with the 24 to 35 group slightly higher at 83% level. In Paris, however, the pattern is different. The older the group, the lower the percentage. Among those aged 65 and over, only 54% see climate change as entirely or mainly humanly caused. Then we ask whether climate change can be stopped or even reversed. A majority of respondents in Munich, 55%, believe climate change can be stopped. In Paris, this share is much lower at 40%. In both cities, however, most respondents think climate change cannot be reversed, with 63% in Paris and 84% in Munich. Then we ask how worried were respondents about climate change. In Munich, 63% of respondents say they're extremely worried or very worried, compared with only 53% in Paris. These shares are noticeably higher than the national figures, 54% in Germany and just 38% in France. These results are quite interesting to me. So while people acknowledge that climate change is mainly humanly caused or entirely humanly caused, personal worry varies a lot. So, and we see that the national estimates are even lower. So when respondents are asked which is the worst environmental problem at the national levels, in both cities, respondents agree this is related to the depletion of natural resources. However, it's interesting to observe what comes next in second and third places. In Paris, it is chemicals and pesticides. In Munich, higher temperatures in summer. But then in Paris, it converges with the third place of the answers, with also higher temperatures during summer and water scarcity, which is quite worrying. So when respondents are asked to what extent they feel personal responsibility, we see that the city mean and the national mean is not different from Munich and Germany, but it is different in Paris, being the national mean higher in this case. So these results are also very interesting for us. We hope that there's some papers, some research coming out of this data. Okay. So when respondents are asked about how likely it is that governments, manufacturing companies, or the municipality take action that reduces climate change, responses in both cities favor the impact of municipalities. You can see here that the ones that get the lowest average response is the country's governments, indeed. So we then ask some statements about climate change, and we ask our respondents to say whether they think each of them were true or false. And we had all sorts of things here, from burning oil produces CO2. Climate change, again, is mainly caused by human activities. We want to reintroduce this question as a check. Genetically modified foods are unsafe to eat. Nuclear power plants emit CO2 during operation. The global CO2 concentration in the atmosphere has increased during the past 250 years. And the last century global increase in temperature was the largest during the past 1,000 years. In general, we see that these are the answers from Munich, and I will present in the next slide, the answers from Paris. In general, we see that although the percentages change, let's say the majority of respondents tick the correct answer. But there's still some large percentages that either don't know these answers or go to the false true statement in this case. Okay. So in general, at the beginning, I have to say, me as an expert in questionnaire design, I had some questions about whether we could be so specific, asking respondents about greenhouse gas emissions and so on. So we went ahead and see what happened with these questions. We were really surprised to see that respondents are able to answer these questions. They have an opinion about this. So it seems that these topics, fortunately, are becoming more prevalent in public opinion. When we ask if the level of greenhouse gas emissions in both cities has changed over the last 2 years, the opinion was divided in both cities. About a third of the respondents said that greenhouse gas emissions have increased a lot. About another third, some say that they have remained the same, and we have slight lower amounts saying that they have decreased a lot or slightly. Then we move on and ask if they have done some actions that are intended to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions. And 61% of respondents in Munich and 74% of respondents in Paris have indeed made changes to reduce emissions in the last 2 years. These are different depending on the city, which is also very interesting because the cities are quite different among themselves. So, for instance, in Paris, respondents prefer walking to make short journeys, also reducing households' energy consumption. And in Munich, they also prefer walking, but they also prefer in the same amounts, so to say, using or increasing public transportation, also cycling instead of driving a car. Okay. Then we ask about how satisfied or dissatisfied they were with the air quality in both cities. Respondents are much more satisfied with the air quality in Munich than in Paris. And somehow this is related, correlated to the median level of the fine particle matter. So it's indeed the air is better in Munich than in Paris. Okay, so then we ask about their opinion on green policies before and after mentioning taxes being raised. And I found this one of the most interesting results overall, because when we don't mention that this policy may come with a potential increase of taxes, people show more support to these policies. These policies were subsidizing installing solar panels in buildings, subsidizing renewable energy, and subsidizing residents' purchase of electric cars. So you can see, for instance, in the first case, that when no mention of taxes, that the question doesn't mention taxes, the percentages of approval are above 80% or just 80%. And when we mention taxes, this decreases a lot in Munich and somewhat in Paris. So this is a very interesting result of how presenting these trade-offs, respondents can change their opinion. Okay. So then I have few final slides about transportation. Which is your most frequently used mean of transportation for traveling around Munich and Paris? In Paris, the most preferred transportation method is the metro, the subway. And what is interesting here is that we see that the geography of these cities also determines how residents move. It is much larger, the percentage of people who moves by foot in Paris rather than in Munich. And these results are also quite interesting to us. Okay, so finally, we ask about what to do. Well, I have still 3 slides. What people think overall about the state of public transport in both cities nowadays. The means are quite similar, but then when we ask which ways they could use to improve public transportation, answers change a bit. So in Munich, the preferred way to improve public transportation is to reduce the cost of it, whereas in Paris is to increase the frequency of public transportation services. In both cities, the least preferable option is to expand the network. They prefer other options before that. Then we ask, to what extent are they in favor or against these low emission zones in Munich and Paris, restricting access by the most polluting vehicles? If you live in a city, in a large city, you may be acquainted with this low emission zone. So this restricts access of motor vehicles to large cities. In Barcelona, we have this since some years ago. I have to say at the beginning, there was large opposition, at least in my city. Looking at the results of Munich and Paris, it seems that this opposition is decreasing, at least there, and that most respondents are strongly or somewhat in favor of these policies. The same happens for the banning of the sale of petrol and diesel cars by 2035. Here we see that in Munich, there's a bit more of opposition to this policy than in Paris. And probably this is also related to the fact that in Munich, private cars are most in use than in Paris, as we saw in the past slide. Okay, so my last slide is about opinion on urban policies. We asked about if they were strongly or somewhat in favor, neither in favor nor against, or strongly or somewhat against these policies, building more bicycle lanes, even if it means fewer lanes for cars. And we were happily surprised to see that in both cities, respondents favored this option. We saw here that the point estimates show this slightly larger opinion in favor in Munich, but we have to see with standard errors and sample size. So probably these two will also become very similar. And also converting spaces for cars into spaces for pedestrians. In both cities, the percentages are statistically the same. So they're strongly or somewhat in favor about this. So I will stop results here. I will stop sharing and then probably move on to your questions, which we are happy to take.
Great. Thank you, Diana. Really great presentation. And yeah, we see Augustin has now joined for the questions as well. So yeah, please do type questions into the Q&A. We've got quite a lot of time to go through questions now. There's a few there already, so I'll start asking. So one from Roxandra Comonaru. Were there any additional challenges from fielding a survey at a city level compared with the national one?
So, well, first, hi everyone. Like Tim and Diana said, I'm Agustin Bosco. I work also on the poll panel survey. And to answer the question, logistically, for example, we did not encounter more challenges, especially considering that it is easier to just control the survey in this case, two populations, but just focus on that. But I would say that maybe on the results part, because it's a very urban area, especially in these cases, because there are two cities, at the end, when you're asking and talking about climate change, you could lose a bit more of other different perspectives, especially from people who live more outside the city and, for example, could have some trouble accessing it because there are more car limitations, just say, which is something that happens in some metropolitan areas. But yeah, considering the project on the focus of the project, which was the cities, we did not encounter much more challenges really.
Great, thank you. Next question from Claudio Donofrio. Greenhouse gas emissions change. I think that's just pointing out one of the results you presented. Is it possible that the respondents do not know the difference between air quality, particles in the air, bad air, and greenhouse gases, which you don't see, smell, taste?
So that was one of my main concerns for asking that question about greenhouse gas emissions, because like Diana said, in that slide, we don't know if people really understand the difference between air quality and greenhouse gas emissions. We do at least ask about the two things so people can differentiate the twin concepts, so they can also answer about air quality and greenhouse gas emissions. But we still don't know if there is that much of that difference is very clear in the public. We even have that discussion when we're doing developing the questionnaire, in which some of us in the questionnaire development team of this panel didn't know exactly the difference between emissions and air quality and how they're related and how they are not related. So we suspect that people may have answered the question not only on kind of perception of how many cars they see that they cause these emissions in the streets, but also if they know about levels of emissions in their city, which sometimes is very informed by the city council, for example, and therefore they can answer based on that. But yeah, that's more or less what we think about the issue.
Sure. Did you get a chance to do any pre-testing for this project in advance of the main data collection?
With the question, you mean?
Yeah, pre-testing the questionnaire.
No.
Okay.
Not pre-testing.
Sure. Yeah, I know it's
No,
not.
we had a soft launch.
Okay, great. The question from
probably I may add
Sure.
something about this. Although we really don't know if they can make a distinction between air quality and greenhouse gases, because we didn't really ask, do you know the difference or the definition or so on. What is, I think, interesting is that people is answering these questions and they have an opinion about it. And the percentages of don't know seem very low. Even if they don't agree that this has increased or not, and this is what we will try to see when the data is linked with this particles data. The important thing, in my opinion, is that they are able to answer and give an opinion about these topics as well.
Great, thank you. Question from Valentina Porter. What about social desirability bias in declarations about actions to fight climate change? And maybe just I kind of had a thought on that one, which is related, I guess, because the question asked about, yeah, kind of actions people have taken to reduce their emissions, I think, or something like that. And it's
Yes.
stuff like working from home there, and I think 20% in one country, 25% in another country said they've done that. But I don't know, do you think they're answering in terms of I'm doing this to reduce my emissions, or are they just saying, I work from home on some days, and how did you kind of break that down?
So I think that we are not that much concerned about social desirability bias, considering that in this question specifically, consider that people were not saying if they did or did not do like generally actions, but rather specifically saying which ones. But I do share a bit of the concern that after seeing the results that you mentioned, Tim, about what do you consider an action taken specifically for reducing emissions, and what is something that you do normally now that you can enter as an action to reduce your emissions, but maybe you're not doing it specifically for that. So maybe, for example, you're cycling more because you're doing more exercise, but not more because you want to reduce emissions. So that's something that maybe we have a bit of discussion to do with that, as we have to recommend also about these measurements in this project. And it's something to have in mind, that when we are asking about this kind of action and change of habits, it's important to maybe reinforce that to respondents that this is specifically about when you think about reducing your emissions footprint, for example. But yes, it's something that we are more concerned about that part, that we're not that is social desirability bias, I would say.
Okay.
Just to add to this, just remember that this is a only web survey, so we didn't have interviewers here. And if some of these actions were just done because people do them, and not because they were really related to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, what is still interesting is that it is not 100%. So there's a large variability among the two cities. I have here again the percentages. So in Munich, 61% of respondents say they have made some changes to reduce these emissions, and in Paris is 74%. So there's still a large share of respondents that say, no, I haven't done this. And this decreases in a way our concerns, because they may, so to say, inflate a bit the numbers, but some of them are also comfortable saying, no, I haven't done any of these actions.
Sure. Great, thank you. Got some more questions. So Susanna Byland says, thank you for an interesting presentation. I wonder if there's a special reason why the question about increased gas emissions starts with, in your opinion, and not with, do you know if. Maybe it's my English that is bad, but I interpret to have an opinion as if there is no right or wrong answer.
Yes, so in this question about the greenhouse gas emissions, we were more focused on understanding the perception of people, because we assume that not a lot of people know the exact answer on how greenhouse gas emissions increase or decrease in their city, because sometimes it's about being informed, generally about these topics and being interested and such. But it is interesting. It was interesting for us to know the perception of what people have. Do they think that it has increased or maybe decreased or stayed the same? So that's why we went for, in your opinion, rather than do you know if, so we can understand more the perception that people have rather than the knowledge.
Great, thank you. Question from Eve Robbins. Interesting that you were surprised by some of the positive results, e.g. around policy changes or acknowledging man-made climate change. Why do you think we underestimate the extent to which people care about climate change?
So I would say that this is maybe because it's an aspect that we are seeing, we're still seeing debated in public opinion and public debates, but it's not maybe as relevant or that relevant as it was maybe a few years before. So that's we might underestimate it a bit. But and there's also something about social desirability on these questions about being concerned or being informed. It is very easy to say, I am very concerned about climate change, but then maybe don't, for example, apply that to your voting behavior, let's just to say. So it is difficult to say. I think I would say that what it is very promising or positive about our surveys to see how this maybe concern or interest applies to public policies, and how there is greater support, and there is still in an urban area some rejection to these policies. So you see that there is still a debate inside these spaces, but that there is a majoritarian support for more green policies and also taking more action. So I think that even though there could be some doubts about whether people are really worried about climate change, but at least they support policies to tackle this issue.
Thank you. Next question.
I may add a bit about this. I
Sure.
think that what is very interesting here is that results are consistent. So we have a large share of the population, the sample in general, that is worried and concerned about climate change, but we still have, for instance, 30% in Munich and 33% in Germany who are just somewhat concerned or worried, and 13% in Germany who are not at all worried about this topic. So when you say, well, yeah, maybe they may be answering that, yeah, I'm worried or not, and just giving an opinion without really caring about these topics. I don't agree with that, because we still see variability, and we see, most importantly, that the patterns coincide in which cities are more aware, are more informed of these problems than large cities, especially, than when compared with the national means. And this is the same for support to policies. There's some debate, as Agustin said, in the cities. So it's not that respondents are only saying, yes, I support this, especially when we present these trade-offs. The trade-off with taxes, for instance, is very interesting. Then the discussion, the debate on the support changes as well. No, well, if this will cost more taxes, I have to rethink my answer. Then also when we present some trade-offs with respect to cars, well, you want more areas for pedestrians at the cost of car areas, so to say. And then you see that percentages vary, and respondents debate on these topics. So I think that this variability in the data is important, and reflects that they're not just answering uninformed opinions, but that they know, and these topics are in the media, and that we're hearing this more and more in general.
Oh, great, thank you. Have you noticed any significant differences between younger and older residents?
So as Diana presented the results at first, because we call them preliminary, because we just recently, a couple of months ago, finished having the final data set, and we even are still correcting it. So we are going to do this more in-depth analysis in the future, also to publish these results in a paper. So right now we have not gone into that regard with the results. So apologies, we cannot answer that right now.
But I take the opportunity here to invite you to use the data and to do this type of analysis. We are part of ESS ICOS, and as such, we are also researchers, and as such, we are also working on this data for our deliverables, for the linkages and so. But I just want to remind you and insist on this. This data will be publicly available for the scientific community on the ESS website before the end of the year. So probably it is our ESS data users who should also go more deeper in this type of analysis. So far, I just presented these differences in age of the question about climate change being caused by natural processes, human activity, or both. And there we saw that the percentages didn't vary a lot in Munich, but are in Paris as respondents' age. So the older the age group, the lower the percentage that think that climate change is caused entirely or mainly by human activity. This just gives an insight that probably there's very interesting variations by age in the data.
Thank you. And yeah, could you connect your results to smaller city units and connect it to environmental information within the project?
So as Diana mentioned in the presentation, we are working towards that. We are now working to see if how to connect the data that ICOS has on emissions from different sources with our data based on the district level of our data, because we have the addresses and then we convert them into the districts, we group them into the districts really, and then we will compare the survey data with the environmental data from ICOS. So it will be a smaller city units, because in that way we can compare the means and the average of these environmental indicators with our survey questions.
Sure. Okay, and yeah, a question about response rates. Do you have any sense of whether the response rates in this study was higher, lower, or the same as the response rates in Germany and France for the ordinary ESS survey?
So in this question, if the response rates are about the survey as such, it might be more difficult to compare, considering this is an only online survey and without paper. So, for example, it's difficult to compare to how set completion works in the ordinary CSS survey. But when it comes to questions and response rates on questions, they are very similar. We didn't have higher non-response in most of the questions. It's just a few, but the non-response was between 2 and 1%. So I think it's very similar to the ESS data.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think it was probably about the sort of overall study response rate, but as you say, there was some differences in the methodology. I did notice that maybe the numbers dropped off a bit between the first and second wave. I don't know if that was something you were expecting, or you were sort of hoping more people would be retained between those waves.
Yes, I see that was an issue, especially in Paris. And we know from them that it is quite common that people are less engaged in these kind of panels by the time. In the case of Munich, there was a drop, but there wasn't that big of a drop, and they were able to retain a lot of responses. So yes, we expected that it would happen, because especially between the second and the third wave, which were more or less 1 year apart from each other. So that was a bit more challenging, but we were able to maintain many of the responses and even conducting some kind of recontact phase, especially in Paris, to get some people from the first wave if it was possible, so we can increase the number.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Question might be a nice one to finish on. So what was your experience to be part of a Horizon project in the natural sciences?
In this case, I think maybe Diana can answer more, because I was more part in the middle of the project, really.
Yeah, well, I think it was very interesting to collaborate with other area of science. First, because you have to arrive to a common understanding of what, so you know what are the objectives of the project, but then let's say we need to speak the same scientific language. Then at some point you realize that measurement theory is the same, whether you measure it with particles or humans, and then things start to develop. I think this was a very first interesting collaboration project, and I hope that social sciences are taken more on board to explain what's going on in other areas. Specifically, for instance, here it's clearly kind of obvious for everyone that if you add human data, you can have a better understanding of what's going on with climate change. What are the drivers of it? So overall, it was a very interesting experience, which I expect we repeat in the future. Thank you for this question.
And if I could just add a bit, I would say that for us, it was really interesting to see the big interest in social data in these spaces in which they are normally just see numbers in some cases, but they don't really have this kind of one-on-one experience to treat with social scientists and survey methodologies. And it was very interesting to see how they react very positively to our area of research and how they value the social data and how they can be mixed with this more environmental data in this case, but other types of data generally.
Great, thank you. We just actually had one more question come in while you're answering that. So, yeah, the participants were the participants invited by post or online invitations? Is the question.
Yes, there were sent letter invitations in both cities, approximately 2,500 for a gross sample in each city. And in them, they were asked to participate in the online survey. And in the subsequent waves, wave 2 were also invited by post for the people who said that they were going to participate. And in the case of the third wave, they were contacted by email.
Great, thank you. I think we're all out of questions. So yeah, thanks everyone for sending your questions. Some really, really nice ones to go through. And thanks to Diana and Agustin for the presentation and the Q&A. Been really good session. As always, we'll share the recording. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And hopefully we'll see you again for the next one of these methods seminar series coming up soon. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Bye bye.